Hello, 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 and happy new year, everyone. It is your girl, Marquessa Keith and Kiana Nelson. We are back for the Mindset Over Self Doubt episode 6, part 2. We did part 1 right before the holidays. So, happy new year. I hope everyone enjoyed their holidays. I am the owner of Atkins and Keith Consultants LLC and Fit In Ladylike, and this is the Fit In Ladylike A Boss Series. So, we're going to go a little bit deeper tonight and share some more about mindset over self doubt because, as you all know, as a part of part 1, we had a few viewers, well, more than a few viewers that reached us during the episode, after the episode, and they're asking for more. And you know, we're all about giving the people what they ask for, okay? It would not be an episode or series if we do not give you what you're asking for. So if you missed part 1, let me just give you a recap really quick. And you can also go back and watch part 1 after this. And if you're not able to join us live tonight on YouTube or the Facebook private group, you can also go back and replay part 2. As you know, I leave it in the group. So a quick recap of part 1, we talked about and we discussed in great detail, the different ways mindset is drastically improved, how people drastically improve their mindset through someone's life situation. And we broke that out into different areas: the abundance of mindset, the positive mindset. We talked about growth mindset. We also talked about a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset that we talked about, we broke it down for growth. We broke it down for what, we broke it down for the how, and we broke it down for the why people think the way they do, behave the way they do, and things trigger them so that they emotionally move the way that they do, whether it's a mood, a vibe, a room, whatever the case may be. It does interfere in a good way or bad way with your performance and productivity, with progress and progression for those of you life learners out there like myself. And then from the beginning to end, if you're in a leadership role or you aspire to be in a leadership role, the benefits that you're getting out of that based on the way you think. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And we're going to start part 2 off with a quick discussion to just break down a little bit more and give you viewers and the audience some different perspectives to solve some of those mindset problems that you have. So, first off, we're going to go into the different ways we think about self awareness. Self awareness is that umbrella that captures everything in our life, the way we move, like I said before, but the way we think about our life in general. So it's all about, why do we operate in a positive or a negative mindset? So we're going to start there first. Some of the problems with that I can identify. And then, Kiana, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you provide some input to the audience as well on this one. So we're talking about self-awareness and why do we operate in a positive or a negative mindset. Some of the problems that I have faced or seen, whether I experienced it directly or indirectly, is, that lack of patience with people who don't operate the way we operate, the lack of emotional intelligence, not good at reading rooms, reading vibes, or reading energy. And sometimes when we cannot do that and it morphs into a bigger problem, it results into sometimes petty behavior instead of choosing a more diplomatic way to solve the problem respectfully, i.e., communication. If you're communicating and conversating with somebody and you can't come to an amicable agreement, there's a diplomatic way to agree or disagree rather than being, resulting to these petty ways that we can sometimes have. That's all about the mindset. So, Kiana, I'm going to let you speak on that a little bit more when it comes to self-awareness and why do we operate the way we do when we talk about a positive and a negative mindset.
Great. Thank you, Marquessa. And I appreciate you having me back in front of your audience. And Happy New Year to everyone. So excited to continue this conversation today. And happy we're starting off speaking of self-awareness. There's a few things that as you were speaking, I started to think about. And to put it simple, you made me think about what makes people tick. Do you know what makes yourself tick? Do you know what makes others tick? And when you said that people can't come to an agreement, it's because they're not first being respectful of each other's opinion, even when you agree. But also sometimes you don't know internally what triggers you. What triggers you to act the way you act? And one thing that I think about is with self awareness, sometimes you react to certain people, certain situations. And what I challenge the audience to do is to become aware of what is making you tick. Maybe what makes you have that self doubt. Is it a person? Is it a person that you truly respect that has made you feel a certain way? And now they, every time they do something or react a certain way, it triggers your mindset. So I think that self-awareness piece is really key because you want to understand what is putting you in the place that you are in today, but also recognizing that mindset so you can do something about it. That's a lot of that self-awareness. And then when you talk about being able to work something out with another person, some of that is paying attention to what pushes other people's buttons. You and I both know when you operate and you work with someone, you know what's going to get under their skin. And your mindset to think about the fact that you want to get under someone's skin and push those buttons is not a great thing. That's all in your mindset. The mindset has to be along the lines of, I'm going to come to a respectful decision, and it's okay if someone disagrees. What I've tried to operate in as of late is it's okay for other people to have different opinions because it doesn't always have to be my way. The mindset is respecting other people's opinions, but also learning from them and becoming more self aware of when you are showing up a certain way, but also what triggers you.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you some of the solutions, or one of the solutions I'll start with to that is, paying attention to people behavior styles, like we've mentioned in the past. And I'll give you a personal reference of my own. As I found myself matriculated in my career life, in my personal life, I met different networks of people that I knew right off top didn't operate like me. Or as I was reaching back and my mindset was developing, growing, changing, and maturing, sometimes I had to realize which network of people I was outgrowing. And in which case, a lot of times you don't want to be offensive. You don't want to push people away. You don't want to ruin historical relationships. You want everybody to be kumbaya, happy with you, like you, whatever the case may be. But moving on to my personal experience was I really had to allow God to transform my mindset so he could equip me to be able to handle someone else who thought differently. Maybe I had not rose to that way of thinking in that occasion, in that moment, in that space, in that environment, but I didn't want to be intimidated by it. So I had to tap back into my personal, professional, emotional, and my spiritual side and realize, okay, if God has transformed my mind the way I think, based on my growth and my connection with people and my divine connection with him, I have to throw that in there. I had to allow my mind not to be conformed in a negative way, but be conformed in a positive way so I can see and hear and listen and receive the other person's perspective. Because sometimes we're not in receive mode, we're just in that go mode, right? It's my way or the highway, and it becomes a one-way conversation instead of a two-way conversation. And I think a lot of that has to do with self-criticism. If we're not self-critical of our behaviors and our actions, it's hard to receive constructive criticism from other people, or we'll mix it up. They're not one and the same. Me being self-critical of myself is because I know me. Someone else pulling out constructive criticism of the way I think or the way I may have articulated myself in a room is not a time for me to be offensive about that constructive criticism, but to take it as a solution to whichever mindset problem I connected that with based on my behavior style and how I chose to make decisions. So when we talk about, paying attention to the behavior style and how people make decisions, how they interact with other folks, and how they stabilize those thoughts so they can get rid of stinking thinking and position it to the right way of thinking. What are some of the other solutions, that you can touch on with the audience and provide value on for them to be able to solve these problems or these gaps when we talk about mindset, self-awareness, and why do we, operate in a positive, negative mindset? I'll let you deep dive it some more.
Yes, so you made me think of a few different things. And when you spoke about maturity, the first thing I thought of is taking accountability and ownership for the roles that we play. And I don't think we always want to do that, because that means we have to self criticize ourselves for the way we showed up. And maybe the way we showed up is a direct correlation to how somebody responded to us. So you made me think about accountability and um, taking ownership. But I also want to go back to our first session really quick, because I think this was also a topic where we start to speak about engaging with other people and navigating through our lives and how we've grown. And I believe I said it. This may not be the exact wording, but sometimes you outgrow people. So I just want to remind the audience, it's okay, because sometimes you outgrow people because your mindset starts to change. And I do want to remind everyone, you can have a positive mindset. And when you are around people that you used to hang around very often and they continue to have this negative mindset, it's okay to release them, because you want to surround yourself with positivity. So I just wanted to recap on that, because I think that's a very valuable piece for people to understand, that you are going to have growth, your mindset is going to grow, and you are going to outgrow some people that maybe you interacted with before.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
So let's take a deeper dive of how we put some things into action to really acknowledge and understand when we are playing a role and not being self-critical for ourselves. One key that I am working on doing more on is reflecting on my interactions. When an interaction doesn't go the way that we want it to, and you sit back and reflect on it, you may think of how you can handle situations differently. I've been trying to do more of that when I interact with family, with friends, and if the situation or the conversation doesn't go as planned, I go back and I think about, what could I have done differently to have that conversation result in a different at a different endpoint. And so I encourage you all to reflect on the different interactions that you have. It only takes a second to actually reflect even further. Write it down and start making notes of when something doesn't go as planned or a conversation doesn't go as planned, because what you'll start to notice is a pattern. Is that pattern regarding the people that you're interacting with? Is that pattern regarding the situation? What is it that's happening? Because guess what that ultimately does for you? Create self-awareness. So if you write it down, you will start to see what is triggering you and what's causing you to show up in the way that you are today.
Yeah. And I think further, some additional solutions is understanding that you have to have control of your peace protecting practices. Let me say that again. We as individuals, when we're calling ourselves, oh, we're self aware, but we can't really understand how to be self aware 100% in any environment that we're placed in, we have to learn how to put our own peace protecting practices in place. You have to be able to compartmentalize that criticism, compartmentalize, am I really offended about something being pulled out because I don't want to change it and I'm just stubborn and I'm in a comfort zone? Or is it something that has embarrassed me so much so that I feel like I can't come back from it? Like, that's the mindset that in 2022, whether you make New Year resolutions or not, your mindset has to be intact. And I'll touch on another point of why it's so important to realize what the solution is that needs to be put in place for one to get over the mindset gaps, problems, and self-doubt, doubt and belief, limiting beliefs, and everything else that pushes them back. We all connect how successful we are sometimes, not everybody, let me correct myself. Some of us equate how successful we are to how much money we can make. But if you don't have a wealthy mindset, you can't put wealthy strategies in place, you can't take care of your health, you've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out where do the problems lie that I already know and I've already identified, or that someone else have pulled out and identified and I have disregarded it, and what solutions do I need to put in place so that I can practice and implement these peace protecting practices. It could be very simple. Taking that criticism one day and just having that open discussion and telling and explaining to that individual why you are the way you are, why you behave. Sometimes we feel like, well, I don't have time. I don't have to explain myself to this person. I don't have to explain myself to that person. Well, if you're going to find yourself living life around people, and we're always around people, you might run into that person that you have to explain how to treat you. You have to explain to them how to understand you, and then likewise make it a two-way conversation so we can close the mindset gap. Most of us have been there, but we might be in denial that we have been there with this whole mindset over self-doubt, or vice versa. It's more self-doubt and not enough of the mindset piece. So girl, yes, I'm loving this. I am loving this.
Can I add on to your protect your peace?
Yes, go ahead.
This is something that one of my coaches told me. She said, protect your peace and guard your heart.
Absolutely.
And that's one way that I've started to operate, is protect my peace and guard my heart. And I believe we discussed this a little bit, Marquessa, and it was around priorities. And I think my mindset around my priorities versus what other people's priorities are, has really helped to put me in a good space. There's this TED talk that I watched, and it was all around stop taking things so personal and being okay with the fact that my priorities aren't necessarily somebody else's priorities. And being okay with the fact that you have to own your priorities. And if someone else doesn't agree with your priorities, you still got to protect your peace and guard your heart. So I'll give you a simple example of that. How many times have you been invited to a party and you tell yourself, I got to go because I was invited? Now, it is respectful to go if you can, but if you are truly dreading going to that party, your mindset going to the party is, I don't want to be here. Now, sometimes we get there and we have fun, but I operate in the mindset of, I appreciate people inviting me somewhere, but if I truly don't want to go, my mindset is not going to be that I want to be there. So I'm going to decide that maybe that's not my priority right now, and I'm going to go do something else to put me in a better mindset. Someone, or the person that invited me, could possibly feel offended that I did not show up. But I encourage you all to remember this. Somebody else's priority doesn't have to be your own priority. And you have to respect that your priorities are not someone else's. And I think for me, taking this to another level is, my mindset has been in a very positive space because I operate in that way. I protect my peace, or guard my heart, and I make sure that my priorities are my priorities, and I own it. And I have to decide at the end of the day, what am I going to give my time to, and what am I going to decide to make a priority? And today, I have a little girl. She's my priority. If someone is inviting me to a party and it interferes with something that relates to her, I can't be guilty or feel bad about missing somebody's party if my priority is my little girl. And they can't do anything but respect that. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I live a happier life living in that mindset of understanding that my priorities aren't someone else's, and their priorities doesn't have to match mine.
Yes. And so that's going to lead us right into this next topic of discussion, which is the personal and professional positions that we can find ourselves in. And it could be any position. And when I say positions, maybe you're put on the spot to solve a problem for not just yourself, but for a group when we talk about the professional side. On the personal side, same thing. Maybe you're putting yourself in the spotlight to solve a problem. That problem could be a health problem. That problem could be a financial problem. That problem could be, anything you go down the list on, a family problem, relationship problem, friendship problem, all these problems that sometimes either are just there or we create them ourselves. And so, speaking of the personal and professional positions of mindset and being self aware, and then just deep diving that portion of the conversation, we spoke a little bit about communication, but we can talk about that more too, because that's very critical and that's very important. Whether we understand how to communicate with another person who doesn't communicate as well as we do, or we think they communicate a whole lot better than we do, and we don't feel like we can keep up, whether it's their vernacular or whatever the case may be. Because I know back in my day, that's something that I used to be fearful of, is I can't keep up with this conversation in this room because I don't even understand what these people are saying, because their vernacular or the context of the conversation would either purposely go over my head or I just found myself disinterested. So I disconnected from the conversation. And that was on the personal and professional side. And what I was apt to do, because self-doubt kicked in my mind, I'm gone. I can't hang. I can't be here. This isn't my space. This isn't my tribe. But what I learned as my solution, and other people probably can identify as well, is I learned to lean heavy into it and figure out, okay, if this is the disconnect for me, let me decide how I want to be flexible in this so I can listen and learn. Because sometimes that's all it takes to really understand context in a conversation that you think you're missing, is really listening to what they're saying, understanding and trying to connect. And then here's the kicker. Don't be afraid to ask the question, even if you think it's a stupid question or the wrong question. And I know that may seem so generic to say, but that's true, because a lot of the stuff that are so basic, these things that are so basic when we talk about mindset, like even us talking about it now, I can guarantee you somebody in the audience is saying, oh, girl, I already know that. Yes. And I typed on my page early, like yesterday, I was like, people are listening, but are you effectively implementing it? Are you effectively executing on it? Because I know a lot of things, but I can be honest and tell anyone, because I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm more prone to being better. I'm more prone to progressing. I'm more prone to not being stuck in a certain place, to where embarrassment, whoever sees it as embarrassment, it doesn't really matter. And that's a mindset trait that you have to have, because that's where self-doubt kicks in. But not to stir too far off the topic, because I want to keep it with that personal and professional positions, but I wanted to put all of that out there so people will know exactly where we're going with this, to identify what some of the problems are and talk about the solution. So that was the communication side, but you had some really good points that you shared on part one about the whole overthinking, being in unfamiliar places. So I'm gonna let you touch on the personal and professional positions and give us a little bit more of some of the problems that you have identified and see, and then what are some of the solutions that the audience and the viewers can take away from this conversation tonight as part two for the personal and professional positions.
Marquessa, as you were talking, more thoughts started to pop into my head. And I'm trying to think, I'm like, where do I take this? Because there's so much that I was thinking about as you were speaking. But let's touch on this professional position first. And you made me think about the times you have, as a professional, possibly where you have been in rooms where you didn't fit in. Most of the time, if you are in a room and you don't fit in, that's where that self-doubt starts to creep in. You start to think about, do I belong here? And sometimes you don't think you belong there because another person in the room has made you feel like you don't belong there. So you start to question yourself. And so that self-doubt. So where that mindset kick in is, again, giving yourself that pep talk. And I've said this before, giving yourself that pep talk when you walk in the room to say, I belong here. But you also touched on a very important piece that made me think about that fixed versus that growth mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when you are asking questions. When you're asking questions so you can learn. If you put in your mindset that I am in this learning mode and I'm going to ask some questions to help me understand what's going on, that's a growth mindset. When you jump into the mindset of fix and you say, I'm not going to ask that question because I don't want them to think that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I don't know something, or that I don't belong in that room. That's that fixed mindset that creeps in sometimes, that stunts you and keep you where you are because you don't keep moving forward. So I just encourage people to start to understand when that self-doubt is creeping in because of the rooms that you're in. Is it because someone in that room made you feel like you didn't belong there? So now you start to doubt your credibility, your value, what you bring to the table? Or is it because you walk into the room already feeling like you don't belong there? So you're doubting yourself. And again, at the top of the conversation, we spoke about self awareness. You have to be aware that that is happening and that's creeping in. No one is saying that all of these things will be fixed overnight. But if you start with that self awareness and you start to recognize it, you can quickly catch it and change your mindset about how you are thinking about those different situations.
Yeah.
So that's really key for me, and something that I personally continue to go down this path of understanding when is that self-doubt starting to creep in. And again, what triggers that self-doubt? Is it a person? Is it a situation? And hopefully you all are hearing this thing. You got to understand what's triggering you to be in this mindset and start to shift it. Start to shift it to the point where you are making progress. And we've said this before, it's progress. You don't have to be perfect, but as long as you're making progress every day, that's how you all are going to continue to change your life and move it in a better direction than what you may have been today.
Yeah. And I think going into rooms, going back to when you said walking into rooms sometimes can create self doubt because people don't feel like they belong. They've fallen into this fixed mindset. That also goes back to just reading that room within the first few minutes, whether you're reading it based on the posture of the person, whether you're reading it based on someone you know through another person, i.e., an acquaintance,
Mhm.
reading the room or reading a person based on the way that they're dressed, reading the room based on the way the person is addressed from other people in the room or how they're respected. There are so many ways to figure out how to read a room so you can determine who am I not going to be afraid to go and have a sidebar conversation with, so it can be a bootstrap effect. Now I can get that one-on-one face-to-face vibe and know if they're really sincere and genuine about my upward mobility or growing me or taking this conversation to the next level, or have I just confirmed what I knew when I walked in the room. A lot of times we confirm things without confirming things. We're confirming them. We don't have any facts tied to that confirmation. So I'm glad you touched on that. And then the other part that
Can
I
I
want
share
us to
one
discuss.
thing too?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
And this is a perfect example. This happened to me today. Um, I was on a video call, and it's a call that I'm normally very comfortable in the room. There was a person that I respect that said something, and I thought that they were making a comment towards me, but not saying it directly to me. And that self doubt started to creep into my head like, what did I do wrong? And I had to check myself to say, he may not even be talking to me. I'm making an assumption that
Mm,
he's talking to me. But that goes back to that self awareness piece of checking yourself and being aware of when that happens. And so, as you were talking, I'm like, this happened to me today. And again, like I tell everyone, you are going to have things that pop up that allow that self doubt to sometimes want to creep in, but you got to nip it in the bud and cut it short really quickly to put me back in a positive mindset. Because now, in that meeting, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I can't say anything. He's going to come back at me. And I'm like, after a while, he's not even talking about me. I'm assuming he's talking about me. And I put myself in this situation not even realizing the conversation isn't about me. I made it about me.
Yes. And that's what I like to call my definition of double speak. I spoke it in my own mind, even if I didn't speak it out loud. And because I heard them say something similar to it, didn't have to be the exact thing. Oh, they double speaking. They must be talking about me because I just thought about that. It just popped up in my mind, all that. But that is so spot on, especially when you say you need to cut it. These things bring stress. And that stress is way too high. You need to cut it. Girl, you got to. I know that was a little bit corny, but I had to throw that in there because stress levels creep. They creep on the smallest things. And next thing you know, you out here strung out when you can just cut it off. And this goes to the next solution point of this is we have to know when to stop wasting time on things that are outside of our immediate control. We like touched on it just a tad bit in part one, but that control mechanism that we try to place on ourselves don't work with everybody that we come into contact with. It doesn't work for everyone or on everyone that we work with. It doesn't work on everyone that we work for because we're trying to be in control of everything when ultimately we're not in control of anything. We're only in control in that moment with what we have control over. And that is another thing that leads to self-doubt and then, that stinking thinking and people messing up their mindset. Today's control is not yesterday's control. Someone may have given you a task or given you a personal, thing in your life, whether it was good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, that you may have had some piece of control over. Those are the only things that we need to make a decision on. Everything else, you have to stop wasting your good time, your good energy, your good effort, and cut it off and move on so that you can get some peace. Going back to that whole peace protecting practices, that is another one. We have to realize what we're in control over, and control meaning that instantaneously we can make a decision and it can change. If you cannot change it, you got to stop trying to control it.
And you can't worry about it. And
You
you didn't, we didn't talk about this, Marquessa, but as soon as you said control, I started to think about the course that you and I are going to go through together and the learning that we're going to continue to do to invest in ourselves. And it talks about the saboteurs, and control is one of them, that control piece. But that's a topic for another conversation
yes.
for us to get into, because that is something that plays into our mindset, is sometimes wanting to control situations that we can't. And I'm going to be honest with you. That is one that I continue to work on, is not necessarily worrying about the things that I can't control, but I try to control situations to almost make sure that I'm trying to predict what's going to happen. But you can't do that. You can't always try to control every single thing and predict and make things happen the way that you want to. It's just not
Yes.
gonna flow that way.
This is the juicy one that we're about to move on to next. And I say juicy because I think sometimes this particular one, and we're talking relationships, we're going to move on to relationship mindsets, those type of things, whether you're single, you're married, you're casually dating, whatever the case may be, situationships. But the whole mindset of relationships, a lot of problems that I've seen or even I've faced in my own different type of relationships is that whole disregarding happiness within ourselves and expecting a higher level of happiness from someone else. That is just impossible. It's impossible. And I know the saying, a lot of people will say all the time, well, oh, if the person themselves, if they're not happy when we meet or when we become friends, whether it's, female to female friends, guy to guy friends, or the opposite sex trying to date, any type of relationship, oh, if they're not happy, then I cannot make them happy. I think that's a partial truth, because if you are not happy, you can very well meet a friend or someone else that can bring out that happiness that you disregarded. So that way you can be happy together. But the common mistake, and sometimes that can be a problem, is expecting a level of happiness from someone else that we have disregarded in ourselves. That's stressful and that's draining on any relationship. And I can go all night on this one, but I'm going to drop it right here for a second and let you talk on the whole relationship piece.
Yes. And so let's think about relationships and when it comes to mindset. And you just touched on a very important piece, which is happiness. I just went through an exercise to really write down and reflect, what does happiness mean to me? And I have 6 things on my list. So I've defined what happiness means to me. So I encourage you all to think about that. What does happiness mean to you? The other piece, when I think about how I define happiness, to your point, I am the person that is the root of most of the happiness. But there are other people that complement my happiness. And so I think that is key for us, as we think through this. But let's think about relationships and how you operate in these relationships and the mindset.
Mm.
We talked about this earlier. What is driving the relationship? And do you all compliment each other? Do you actually, when I say compliment, do you actually communicate? How is the communication? And sometimes we assume that in relationships, the partner is reading our minds. I've quickly had to get out of that mindset, because you assume someone knows what you want, they know what you're thinking, and that doesn't happen. And so, guess what? In your mind, you start to doubt, am I enough for this person? Am I showing up the way that this person wants me to show up? Because you start to question how they are treating you, because you maybe haven't communicated what you need or what you want. And so in relationships, sometimes our minds will trick us into this self doubt. And you start to doubt your position in the relationship. You start to doubt your value in a relationship, because the other person maybe isn't responding the way that you think that they should. And so I just challenge people to really think about the relationships that they're in, and what's the communication, how are you showing up, and are you allowing your partner to put some self-doubt and limit your worth on who you are because of how they're treating you, when maybe they don't know how you want to be treated.
Mm. That worth is powerful, powerful, powerful. And I
Mhm.
won't say it is the number one cause of damaged relationship, but it's probably in the top 5 is finances. That's something that's discussed from how can I benefit from one's person finance versus a partnership in some cases, or the partnership finance discussion doesn't prolong past a certain period of time, i.e., it's just for this moment we're dating, maybe the first, year to 3 years of marriage, or if it's friendships, kind of figuring out if you got that friend that's always calling, or family member that can be a relationship too. Can I borrow? Can I have? It's all about the boundaries, is the point that I want to make here when we talk about relationships and what could be the number one root cause to a relationship dissolving, breaking up, and going its separate way. That's just one of them. But figuring out how to share and take part and be truly invested in supporting each other's goals is very critical. And I'm not talking verbal support. It has to be both a combination of verbal and interactive support, because that'll lead to the next thing that I'll let you touch on about, knowing each other's love languages, going back to not being able to be a mind reader, the communication. You can compound effect all of these mindset things that just cripples a relationship to the point where it puts it in a ditch, and it's like it's reached a point of no return. And they have to be measurable. Whatever relationship that we're going to enter in any facet, it does have to be measurable, because when we get so bubbly into the happiness part, but that happiness doesn't come with a joint connection of how well can we work and maneuver together, how well can we grow together without becoming jealous of one another, how
Oh,
can we work well together without making it seem as though it's always a competition, or there's a dominance in certain spaces, or in some cases all spaces, when it has to be a shared partnership. I hear that term a lot now, especially when it comes to, single people trying to date is, oh, I'm not doing this DIY anymore, do it yourself, because some things aren't meant for one person to do it themselves. It is meant to be a partnership relationship for very valuable, valid reasons, to be the helpmate to the other person. Again, I say over and over, like I've said on another episode, I'm not called to preach, but I am a child of God. And I know a little bit about the word. So I'm not here to preach to you. I'm just here to tell you that these are some of the facts, the real life facts that people experience all the time, that messes with their mindset, causes a lot of self-doubt, so much to the point where they found themselves unhappy for no reason. And those energies transfer. Those energies transfer. People can feel when you're not happy. People can feel when you have some sort of vendetta going on with them and they don't understand it. And it makes for a sticky, wicked situation.
The
So
energy.
yes, very sticky. And it's kind of like, how do you really come back and overcome that? You have to be in tune to the relationship that you're in, and you have to invest in it. Invest time as well as money, if money is your thing, but you definitely have to invest the time so you can know how each other move. We'll make 15 minutes, 30 minutes to take care of everything under the sun, but will we make those dedicated, committed 15 minutes to really be in tuned into that friendship, that relationship, that marriage, that casual dating, or whatever it may be? You have to be connected and interactive with it so that you don't create the wrong mindset that will cause you to doubt. And now you're starting to believe some things that are not even true because you halfway did the partnership job. It's a
So one thing that you touched on that I just want to tie back to self-doubt that I believe happens to people in relationships is that part about jealousy and competition. If you have a partner that doesn't support what you're doing, you may start to doubt if you should be doing it. And guess what? Now your mindset completely changed on something that could have had you be more successful in your career, in your life, in your personal life, because it was triggered by someone that you are in a relationship with doubting you, but also not supporting you, being in competition and being jealous of you. Not a great situation. So that helps self doubt creep in. So you touched on the five love languages, and this I actually spoke to someone about this today. And if you have not heard about the five love languages, this is really about how relationships sometimes do not go in the right direction because people don't understand their partner's love language. And so when I think about the five love languages, there's five. There's our words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gifts, and physical touch. I had to check out that last one because I always forget about that one. So, what this means for you in your mindset is understanding how your partner operates in these love languages, what makes them feel love. And for yourself, you want to understand too what makes you feel love, what keeps your mind operating in a positive way. And sometimes we start to creep, that self doubt starts to creep in with you and your partner if you feel like your partner is not expressing love to you. You start to doubt if they love you. And it has nothing to do with that truly. It's the fact that the way that they're showing you love is not the way that you receive love. So I encourage people to really think about looking at the five love languages and start to understand in your relationships if you truly understand how you receive love, and be aware if doubt starts to creep in your head on if that person loves you because they're not showing you the love language that you receive, on how you receive love.
Yeah. And you have to decide where you want to compromise on how you receive it, but you're not getting it that way,
Mhm.
or how you're going to project it and you're projecting it the wrong way. Every relationship has to have some compromise. Why? Because we are who we are. We are created the way we are created. We're built the way we're built. And it's hard to change people once you are in a relationship. So if you don't agree or you don't think that you're going to jive with the person. And I keep going back to friendships too, because friendships can break up in a very negative way based on mindset, or they can be very toxic. You do this, I'm friends today, I'm not friends tomorrow. I'm in this relationship with this person today and I'm not tomorrow. And it's a lot of the back and forth. And now you start to feel like you're strung along, or the person is playing games, or it's too much. And that becomes self-doubting too, where you're like, am I fit and am I really built to be in a relationship? So now you become so broken that you can't really be whole for the next person if you're deciding to go on to the next person, or you can't be whole so that you can receive what someone else truly has to give you that you lacked before. So I think that, when it comes to that whole self-doubting piece, self-awareness, mindset, all the compound conversations that we're building upon since part 1 and now into part 2, it makes a huge difference to really know that. And then here's another point that I will make with really understanding from the inside out of understanding your partner or your mate, your husband, your wife, spouse. That cuddle time sometimes is taken for granted. You have to cuddle when you're not in your best state of mind, your best state of feeling. So your energies can really connect to feeling what they feel so you can be supporting, feeling how they feel so you can give that love language that they need to receive in that moment, rather than say, I'm not messing with her right now. She in one of her moods. I'm not messing. Maybe in that particular moment you don't mess with them, but you have to find time. That's a valid thing that y'all know I do research and be studying, that cuddling at what I call the optimal time. You have to cuddle when the energy is low so that you can know how to soothe, console, connect, be there, and be supportive, because now they feel like you really truly have embraced and understand what the day was like, what the heavy burdens are that was on his or her shoulder, what they went through on the job with that boss or that person or those finances. It's embracing it in that time, because when everything is on the up and up and it's good and you're cuddling, y'all on the same page, you're on the same wavelength. But when you're off the same wavelength is when there's a mood, a bad mood and a good mood, and you don't know how to console the person. Cuddling has been one of those forms and ways to transfer the right energy so you can calm it, talk about it, discuss it in a very healthy way so it does not become a toxic way of thinking, becomes and morph into a toxic relationship, or becomes a thing of now you're self-doubting, so you want to put the self-doubt on me, and I don't know how to come out of this struggle because now I have the guilt on my shoulders. You have to get to a healthier point in all types of relationship if they're going to blossom.
I got to give you two things to wrap up because I know we've been talking and chatting. So two things. So one, it's in my household, I call it the 30-second hug. And there are days when I'm like, I need a 30-second hug. We don't have to talk. It could be a hug with my partner. It could be a hug with my little girl. But sometimes you need that 30-second hug. So I agree with you. Sometimes you just need that energy. And I call it the 30-second hug in my house. But I want to wrap up something and bring this full circle. So many people may be thinking, why is relationships coming up in this conversation? And I want you to think about this. If your relationship with your partner, with your friends, with your family isn't on the right track, it affects everything else in your life. Everything else. I'm sure if you had a argument with your partner, when you go to work, you may be a little snippy with people. Displaced aggression because someone in your household or friend made you upset. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that it's important to keep your relationships with your friends, your families, your partners intact because it affects the rest of your life. It affects work, it affects your engagement with others. It just affects so many things. And I want people to pay attention to that. Think about when you are not at your best with your partner, how does it show up everywhere else in your life?
Yes.
Sometimes you don't even want to talk to other people. I don't want to talk to anybody else because
Oh,
you're in a bad, something bad going on with your partner. And so I just encourage people to be aware of that. and understand why it's important for us to talk about relationships and mindset, because it brings everything together.
Yes, that is so important. It definitely will and does show up everywhere else. You can fight it. The more you fight it, the more it show up. That's what I would say on that. And so going to our last point is the capability triggers. I know we touched a little bit on triggers before. And in the last episode, we got down the path of the unrealistic expectation, but we didn't deep dive it a whole lot on the whole unrealistic expectations being one of those problems for capability triggers of what people are truly capable of, what potential they truly have inside of them that they have been very fearful and doubtful to bring out. And it's all that fear of the unknown. It's the fear of unrealistic expectations. You set the bar so high that you feel like you cannot obtain or achieve those goals when you truly can. The potential is inside of you. But if you never really push and try to see what you're truly made of, you would never really know your 100% capability. You will never truly know what you are really capable of if you do not at least give it an attempt, even if you fail. Because at least if you fail, you will realize if it's something you want to try again, and you'll try again until you win, or you will determine that this is something I am never going to try again, and you will know why. Because that lack of capability that you have now tried, tested, and proven will give you those factual basis for you to determine, holistically, if I truly want to tap into that untapped potential because I know I'm capable, even though I have failed, here's what I have learned, and I know what I need to do to move forward. So now you are more prone and driven to try that new idea, to take advantage of that next opportunity, and not try to talk yourself out of something because you have all this doubt in your mind that has told you, no, girl, or no, guy, don't do that. You're not capable of doing it. It's going to fail in 2 to 3 months. These people are not going to support you, but you never even tried.
Right.
Maybe it's a way of moving those things, moving those people, and moving those situations out of the way. If you failed that one time, it's moving all the wrong things out of the way to clear the path so you can get to the right person, the right capability, the right situation. So all of those things that you are capable of, you can prove it to yourself, and you won't need the naysayers to prove to you what you're capable of. So I'll let you touch on the capability triggers before we
Yes.
close out.
I have a few things to really help people as they navigate through this. One, you have to be optimistic. To your point, you got to believe that you can do it, and don't put that doubt in your head that you can't. But the other piece is, as you were speaking and you were saying, you have those people that will tell you they don't believe you can do it. Sometimes you have to move in silence.
Yes.
And I've had many different times where people will say, I didn't know you were working on that. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, is because you possibly as a person that would tell me you don't believe I can do that, or that's going to be tough. And I start to take on that energy and start to doubt myself. And so sometimes I move in silence and just get things done to avoid some of that. But you don't always have to move in silence, because you do want some positive people, and you will know those positive people. You want those positive people that's driving you. You want those positive people that's holding you accountable. So get you a coach, get you someone that you can tell your goals to, get you someone that can help you map out a plan for those big dreams, that can really help you achieve the things that you don't believe are possible. I recently did an exercise, and it was asking me, how do you define leadership? And someone said to me, because I was going around and I was asking different people, how do you define leadership? And one leader said to me, it's inspiring people to do things that they didn't believe that they could do. And so you want to find some people and surround yourself with people that will inspire you to do great things and hold you accountable. And also pick you up when you fall down, because you also need that support, and you need that cheerleader that's going to say, you know what, you gave it all that you can, but I still got your back. And so I encourage you to surround yourself with those type of people that can be your cheerleaders, that can be the people that will hold you accountable. the people that are going to help you visualize how you get there. I have different friends that play different roles for me. And I know when to call who for what I need to feed into my mind and into my body.
Girl, that is a fact because as you were saying that, I was thinking it's one of those ways where you have the right people on your team.
Mhm.
So those people can help you stop manufacturing your weaknesses
Right.
and help you manufacture more of your strengths because weaknesses can be worked on if you want to work on them. Focus on the strengths because when you focus on the strengths, those are the things that are going to keep you going. And if you got the right people on your team and in your corner, that's going to tell you, no, you may have, went left here, but here's how I know you can get back on track because I know you, I believe in you, you believe in you. Let's help each other get to the next level. That is so important about having the right people. And then the last point is that creating diverse opportunities for yourself. You can't just stick with one network. When you find that one good network and you feel like this is all I need, if you feel like that's all you need, if that spoke of a network isn't spoken out to their own network so that they can link those chains, then you might be limiting your diversity when it comes to other opportunities that you have not even been exposed to yet because you met that one group, that one tribe, and you think that is it for you. That's not it. There's so much more to gain by having the right mindset, disregarding that self-doubt, and making sure that you stay positive and you know how to compartmentalize when negative thoughts are creeping up. How are you going to discredit those, digress from that, and get back to what is good for you and what's good for your life and your situation? So working on those strengths. So I'm going to drop the mic right there and let you close us out with any final points and solutions to these capability trigger problems that we have identified, because this has been a wholesome part 2 conversation for me tonight.
Thank you, Marquessa, for having me again. I just really want to wrap up with telling everyone things don't happen overnight. You are going to think back on this conversation and realize that something didn't go as planned, but don't give up. Continue to push forward, continue to be self aware of when things are creeping in your mind, when that self doubt is happening. Recognize the situation, the people that causes that self doubt to creep in, and just be positive and keep moving forward. So, very excited that I got the opportunity today again to speak to this audience. Very happy to spend time with you again, Marquessa. You pull so much out of me in this conversation. So I'm so happy we connected, and I'm sure we will be in front of this audience in some form or fashion in the near future to
Oh,
share
most
some knowledge.
definitely. As I push the go button, no breaks, to expand Fit In Ladylike trademark, trust me, yes, they will see the both of us again on many platforms. I'm just following the blueprint, following the blueprint. So I'm looking forward to doing more coaching, teaching, grooming, growing with people who want to groom and grow with us as coaches. So yes, we will be doing more together as a collaborative effort. So thank you so much, Kiana. Thank you all, ladies, for watching tonight. I ask that you put this on replay next week yourself. If you got kids and you're interested in knowing more about STEM, I have a really good friend, engineering and technology. So that's where I identify in the STEM arena, is with technology. We're going to talk about that next week. So maybe you're an adult, or maybe you have a teen that's in high school, going to college, and they're interested in one of those fields. You do not want to miss the discussion on January 12th. As always, I will put the advertisement up in the flyer so you will know who the guest speaker will be, or the guest I will have on the series for that night. But we're going to deep dive engineering and technology. So have a great night. Happy New Year. And remember, you have to have the power in your mind. It's 90% mental and 10% physical. Have a great night, everyone.